Hello and welcome to SoulWhat, a Soultopia podcast with our producer, Matt Stoker. I am Michelle Welch.
And I'm Roger Welch. So what's up today, Michelle?
Well, today we'll see, first of all, if I can get through without coughing. The allergies, is it just me or is it everyone?
It's everyone.
Is it?
Yes.
So if I have
everyone.
a coughing fit, we went and got like a little vitamin boost today, and it boosted me. I was like, I think I'm having a heart attack. She's like, no, that's just kind of the adrenaline. Then I'm like, no, I think I need to get sick to my stomach. She's like, oh my gosh, you're the highest maintenance patient ever. It's not the first time I heard it, right?
Nope.
No, we're really excited today because we have on somebody, the person on today is kind of a blast from the past, and she saved me. And one of the things we're going to talk about is going to tie in, and I'm not in a couple ways. It's going to tie in, and one of the things is mental health is going to tie in because she really helped me during a hard time in my life with driving my son Tyler around, and we'll home from school and practices and things, but we'll get into that in a little while. But this is our guest this week I'm really excited about is Jency Weeks, and she wears many hats on her day-to-day. She's appeared on screen in shows such as Nashville and Dallas, and two award-winning features and many commercials. She grew up in Texas, attended Baylor University, where she received her bachelor and master degrees. She was involved in the local theater after college, which led her to her career in acting after working in college athletics for a few years. Jency brings together the mindset of a professional athlete and the practice of yoga with the understanding of the meaning of play into each role given to her. She is a 200-hour certified yoga teacher, mother to her spunky daughter, married to an athletic performance coach, a doggy mom, and will always accept a challenge to who is a bigger Golden Girls fan. I see Matt probably is getting a quiz ready over there right now because I will probably fail that one. And I don't know. Tyler could probably now beat you on that.
Tyler and I have had many Golden Girl back and forth. We've had all the conversations in the world about how it was written, the best character, the sassiest moment. So Tyler still hasn't beat me yet, but he's pretty much up there. Thank y'all for having me on. I'm very excited.
I'm so glad you're here. You know, he does win. And Tyler's my oldest son, for those of you who don't know. And I don't know, he's 30 now, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And so to make us all feel really old, right? He's 30 and he would probably win at Disney. I don't know if he could beat you, but he definitely don't ever play Disney trivia with him. But thank you so much for being on, and I really do appreciate it. Tell us just a little bit about yourself and what your bio explains a lot, but what you do just in your everyday life and how I remember being a mom of a young child and trying to blend my work, my fun, my play, and fitness, and also being a mom all together. How does that go for you?
You know, it took me a couple of years to realize that it's okay to do all the different things. You don't have to solely be a mom, be available all the time. So in the last couple of years, this is where yoga's really, really changed my day-to-day. Is I've started to realize that if my mindset's correct, if my heart is in where it needs to be, I'm able to balance everything else out. Now, is it crazy? Yes. Right before we started filming this, my daughter let me know that the shower head exploded in our bathroom. So I'm like, oh, great. This is a turn that you're not expecting before you go on a podcast, but you learn how to balance things out. So I would definitely say that my most important thing for me in my day-to-day is to always breathe in the morning, breathe during lunch, and then close out my day with breathing too. So that it allows me to do anything and everything that you need to do as a professional and as a mom at the same time.
When did you first get interested in yoga?
Probably after I had my daughter, I went through big postpartum depression, and I didn't know that I had it because I was depressed while I was pregnant. I was the only one out of my girlfriends who not only was married but had a baby, so I really felt that I was missing out a lot as 24 a 24-year-old in this day and age. And so after I had my daughter, I was talking to my doctor and she said, "Well, have you ever tried yoga?" And I'm like, "Well, no. Don't you have to be flexible to do that stuff?" She said, "No, it's all about a mindset and about breathing. And then that incorporates into your daily life." So it's probably about 9 years ago. And then I got certified and teach here and there. And it's a very magical practice.
Right. I thought so too, and then I got out of it, and I've been out of it for a while, and I keep hanging on to my membership because it keeps going down. The longer you hang on to the membership, the price goes down, which
Uh-huh.
which is kind of cool. You hang on to it,
But
and the
you
price,
need to go.
but you, okay, and you can take a free guest, right? And so and we used to go some, right? And it really did help me because you mentioned the balance. It was for me, it was getting all three together. To me, it was the balance, it was the strength, and what's the other one? It's the balance, the strength, and the not the coordination or something, all in one day. I'd have one of them on one day, and the next day it'd be like the other one would be off. If I ever had a day when the three parts of the practice came together, I was having a really good day. But I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it because I'm pretty competitive, and it felt like that was the one area, and I am with myself. But I felt like that was the one area in my life where I didn't feel like I had to compete with other people in the room. I didn't feel like I had to, be the best at, because I played tennis growing up, and it's your practice. I love how they say that, and it's your practice. It's where you're at to help you, right?
Yep. I was good with it until early Sunday morning. She says, "Let's go do yoga." Okay, fine. It's just water. It'd be really smooth and easy. And we get there, and it's like 120 degrees in the room. And the lady goes, "Oh, welcome to hot
Metal.
no, metal class, which is hot Pilates." And I was like, I made it about 15 minutes. Screw it. I'm gonna lay down.
He didn't make it 15 minutes. Okay, true time. Here you go, Jency. He made it about 5, and he was, you can't leave the room. And
Right.
so he was like,
It was 120 degrees, and the heat was literally blowing directly on me, and I couldn't breathe. And I was like, I'm not doing this.
he was
And
flat
I'm like,
on the mat.
I'm gonna lay down right here.
And I was worried. I was kind of thinking, is that fish next to me kind of dead? Because you look like this little kind of fish ready to be filleted in the pan.
Yep.
And I was like, is he dead? But anyway, it is great, and it does help me. And I know it helps me a lot and when I do go. And
Yeah.
it's the hardest thing's getting back going once you stop.
Yeah. And I feel like that's with everything too, which is why I think yoga is such a beautiful practice.
Mhm.
When you go, you're gonna get your hiney kicked, whether you're a pro or you're just jumping back in. If you go your first time, you're gonna leave and go, "What in the world did I just do?" But there's something different. You're like, "Well, that was awful. So I want to go again and try and be better at it." Or you get a high and you're like, "Well, that was great. I want that feeling again." So there's something that brings you back to it.
Right.
And you can incorporate that into everything. You can do that with your job. For me as an actor, I can say, "Oh, well, that was a really hard script. That was awful. But I want to do it again because I want to do it better." Or something with JC to say, "Well, that was really good. You got a good energy high off of it. Let's do it again." So that all comes from the base of yoga.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that with yoga and the breathing, a lot of people will say that they'll be just breathing. I've started watching Russell Brand. I don't know if you've watched his podcast, and I know we'll talk about your podcast too, but sometimes I like him, and I like a lot of things he has to say, and sometimes he gets going so fast I can't understand a word he's saying. I think he has a lot of good things to say, but his biggest thing is talking about the breath and how we need to breathe. And what would you say for people listening when you just said it's that breath first thing in the morning? Is it just being mindful of your breath for you?
Well, yeah, it's definitely being mindful of your breath. I mean, first off, you woke up,
Right.
so you're breathing, and that's a huge deal. You're alive and you're breathing. So that's a moment to where you can start your day off in a positive note as soon as you hear the breath come out of your mouth, or if you see your belly rise. And then also with that, our society is so obsessed with being skinny and suck in your stomach, and you squeeze your diaphragm all day. And so also, if you can learn to relax your stomach and breathe from your diaphragm, that gives your body so much more room to expand in your lungs and everything else physically in your body to advance
Right.
throughout the rest of the day, which again, and I hate to continue saying this, is with everything else. If you're continually to be uptight around your friends and around people, your family, and you don't relax, that doesn't help anybody. So that's with your breath. If you hear it and you actually experience it with your belly, with your diaphragm, it'll change everything. Ask any voice teacher. That's the one thing that you will work months on is your diaphragm, and stop talking from your throat.
I remember taking Tyler, when he was
Yeah.
little, and he's one of those that wanted to go. I know Ashley, who works here, she was saying, ask Jency about all the stories about the stage moms and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, Tyler wanted to do all that stuff, so I'll ask her. But he wanted to do all that stuff. But I have some funny stories about him. But it was, and about me too. But I remember them telling him to breathe from his diaphragm, and I did not ever understand it. I played the piano, I never really sang, and never understood it. I probably still don't, and since I'm not practicing it, until I did yoga.
Yeah.
What that was, and I'll still have to think about it sometimes, since I'm not practicing now. The consciousness of that in and out. Which time do I let the belly out, and which time do I draw the belly? And they would. It's the main thing they talked about, even in acting too, just to project, right? So
Oh, exactly. And I was thinking, if you look at a baby, I think for me, that's the cutest thing besides like their little toes, is their belly goes up and down when they breathe. And that just shows how your body is made. And when you're in yoga, you inhale through your nose and breathe into your stomach, and then exhale, and it just cleanses your lungs, gets that extra oxygen out that's settling at the bottom. And it's a really, really magical practice. I mean, anybody can Google it. You can, and different things like that. But if anything, that's the one thing that I would say is to change anything that you're doing, learn how to breathe and appreciate your breath.
yeah, that's very good. I wanted to hop right into so people would understand that Jency used to. I had, when Tyler, being the oldest, when my kids were at a certain school in Dallas, in the Dallas area, I too had depression with all three of my kids. The first two, and I don't know if it was postpartum depression or I've just had like a lifelong kind of underlying ongoing depression. And I know on here you said to talk some about mental health and that you're okay talking about that, and that's something you want to talk about. And so always it was with me, after I had the kids, by the third one, by Tanner, my daughter, we knew to get me a little help. With Tyler, we didn't really know. And it was just, and you thought of, at that point, they thought of postpartum as you're going to, only as the extreme, that you're going to harm your child. They didn't, and that can be part of it, but there's also part of it, you're just depressed. I mean, your hormones have shifted and you're depressed, and you're not going to harm your child. You're just having depression. And so with all three of my children, and then continuing, I have had and worked with, depression. All that to lead up to throughout my life, I've had this struggle with depression and help. I've gotten help and different kinds of help, and yoga's been one of them. But you would bring Tyler home, and I don't remember all the details, but from home from school and choir practice. He lived up at the for theater and for the church. It's attached to a church, to the church practices. He was in everything, and you would bring him home almost like daily.
Uh-huh.
And Tyler contacted me and said, "Mom, Jency, remember, she's the one who just basically was my mom and brought me home every single day from school," and which was really nice of him to say. And so we talked about you last night, and I kind of wanted to segue into from those two things. This was a broad topic, but how did you tell us about your acting? And then at some point, I want you to help us, Roger, to remember to get back to the mental health aspect. But just to let people to know, that's how Jency and I kind of know each other, and it's through Tyler, and it's through the acting and all of that story.
Yeah. So, and it all kind of ties in together. So with Tyler, I'd bring him home from school. I'd take him home from choir practice or theater or whatever it was. And it was so funny because many times Tyler would be, "Hey, Jency, okay, we got to go. I got to go home." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah. I forgot I'm taking you home today. Okay, cool." Or he'd be at the car waiting. So he was just a joy to be around for that year. And I think it was just about a year because then I graduated and left. But we would always be in the car and we would talk theater. He would talk about the plays that he was doing. I did sports. And so that's kind of the only world that I knew. So with him, and we would talk about, I think Wicked was just coming out at that time, the different things that he was going through the school. I always kind of had that in the back of my mind that brought Tyler so much joy, being inside with a group of people, which was completely foreign to me. I would have much rather been outside kicking the soccer ball, running on the track. So I just remember those very specific moments. Tyler burnt many, I don't even know what they're called, a burnt CD, and he'd write the names of the songs on the front. I still have a couple at my parents' house back in Texas. And later on in the year, going through school, going through graduate school, working for a D1 football department, I'd always have those little CDs in my car. And when I'd pop them back in, those memories would come back with Tyler and his joy and just the excitement that brought him. So, after I had my daughter, postpartum depression, when I was talking to my doctor about taking care of things, I said, okay, well, I want to do something for me. I feel like I'm a foreigner in my own body. I need to get out of my shell. She said, okay, well, let's sign up for an improv class. It'll scare you to ends of the earth, and that'll be really good. So I said, great. So I signed up for an improv class, and within the hour, my teacher at the college that I went to in Dallas, he came up, he said, "You're so great. How have you been studying? Who have you been studying with?" And I was like, "Well, an hour. This is my first class, and you're my first teacher." And so it was kind of weird to see, just those little, I know people call them God winks, but those little God winks, like the little CDs that Tyler still had in my car from so many years before. I had already been married, had a baby, but those little things that were around from those times that I spent that year with Tyler came around with the improv class. So within 6 weeks, I signed with an agent with no resume, no idea what I was doing. And a couple of weeks later, I started my journey on the reboot of Dallas. And since then, we've moved up to the Northeast. We're based in Philly, but my career is in New York City. So it's been a roller coaster ride. I didn't even know that I had, but I'm very, very grateful for those different little opportunities that were set along the way. And so I do contribute a lot of it to my daughter, because none of this would have happened without her and without me going through that postpartum depression. And Tyler had been a little buzz in the back of my ear with that whole year of just conversations and talking and having those experiences with him. So my acting career's been crazy. It's been fun. I worked on Dallas. I worked on Nashville, Dr. Pepper commercials. I have a show coming out in the next couple of months. It was in Jurassic Park. And so it's something that I never thought I would do, but I find such joy in it.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you have one of those, commercials? Oh, I did it, but I shouldn't have done it.
I did. I did one of those. I know in Dallas, it's called Jim Adler, and he's a tough lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one of those, I don't even know what to call it. Like, if you got in a car accident, call this number. I definitely did one of those, and that one ran for about 3 years, and I wish I didn't do it.
I saw a billboard. What was it?
It was when we were coming back the other day.
Too much to drink the night before.
No, it was it was coffee in the Monday morning.
No, it was,
or something like that.
Alcohol the night before, or
Coffee.
drunk the night before, coffee in the morning, and her name's spelled,
Her name was Coffee.
Her name's Coffee, but it's spelled a little different. Call Coffee in the Morning, and I was like, no, that's a pretty good ad. That's pretty clever,
That's smart. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I remember it, and I know lots of lawyers, and I usually don't pay attention to those. But, one of my good friends, he may have talked to you way back then, Judy Hagan is one of my best friends, and one of her brother-in-laws, she has, I don't know how many, it's a big family, but he and his wife acted in New York, but they also did commercials, and they have acted for I don't know how long and he was on Seinfeld. He was when he's getting in the taxi cab or something on Seinfeld, but they have had one of the longest careers, this couple, of being just extra parts, not extra where you're in the background, but smaller parts, and then like commercials, like the commercials usually that air during the Super Bowl and stuff. A lot of times they're in those commercials, and I'm telling you that I swear
we've seen them in a couple of movies. Even
we've seen in movies.
Just
all of a
like
sudden we'll
little
go,
small parts you'll be watching. Oh, there they are.
But they've had a longer career than almost anybody. All these really famous people. And who. It's really interesting that they have really made a good career out of just steady work. It's very interesting because I never would have thought about that.
Yeah, you can definitely have steady work and still be able to go to the pickup car line and nobody will recognize you, or you can be in a really successful Super Bowl commercial and it'll be a hit for about, a few weeks, but you're still getting those paychecks. So you can definitely have a career, but also have a life at the same time, which is what I'm really enjoying at the moment.
Well, and you could also be somebody like really famous, and Michelle won't have there's a lot of people, somebody was talking about somebody the other day, and I said, who's that? And they were like, okay, you are getting old. You've got to climb out from under that rock, because I don't know half of the people. But I watch every single show.
You just watch shows, but you're sitting there writing the whole time you're watching shows.
Well, that's true. So
that's so funny that you mentioned that, because I'm in the industry and I don't know anybody, especially outside of like a hair and makeup. When you see people without their makeup on their hair, you're like, I think but I'm not quite sure. So I have the same thing. I could only recognize 3 people: Michael Jackson, Julia Roberts, and Britney Spears, and one of them's dead. So I could only recognize 2 famous people probably in the entire world. Everybody else, I'd be like, oh, great, you're Jessica Biel. Nice to meet you. Yeah. And you're what part of the PTA? Oh, you're an actor. Okay. Totally.
Yeah,
Didn't know that.
Exactly.
Nice to meet you.
So tell us some of the biggest things that you struggle with being balancing, because your podcast, tell us a little bit about your podcast, and then tell us some of the biggest struggles. Every mom has struggled balancing, I think, and I shouldn't be a genderist here, dads too, but struggling being a father and, working. But I will tell you, for me, it was an ongoing struggle for me because of the church I was in at the time. It was you were made to feel guilty if you were working. You were made to feel guilty if you weren't working, because I had a law degree. And I can, without a doubt, say that contributed to my depression, because, I was feeling, not, and I didn't have to accept that guilt clearly, but there was a lot of shame put on you one way or the other by people. What do you mean you're working when you're leaving your child in the daycare? Why'd you have the child? And there was a lot of that back when my kids were younger, and in the environment that I was in. And I don't know if that still goes on, but still there's that inner, feeling conflicted sometimes, maybe with people, or just balancing the different aspects of life. Do you find that hard?
Yeah, and it's still definitely a thing, and especially now that social media is part of our everyday life. I know everybody's heard this term like mom shaming or parent shaming. Are you really supposed to be a working mom? Oh, you stay at home. Well, you should be this. Oh, you breastfeed. Well, you should really feed your kid formula. Oh, you feed your kid formula. Well, you should really be doing this. So there's a constant pressure, at least from what I've seen, on your shoulders as a parent, not just a mom. And that's how this whole podcast kind of came about, was during the pandemic. Everybody watched television shows or listened to podcasts like this one.
Right.
And so I found everything about momming, and I found everything about parenting, and I found everything about acting, but I couldn't find something that merged the two worlds and made it, I'm going to say cliche, okay to be a working mom in the entertainment industry, because you don't hear about that a lot. And you hear more of the, oh, she stopped working for X amount of years to have her kids, and now she's back. Or you would hear, oh, well, she got pregnant and then she got dropped from her agency, which is very true in our industry. But it's more normal than not to have a parent going and doing these things. So that's really what my podcast is about, specifically for moms. Now, I do know that dads, aunts, uncles, grandparents are doing the exact same thing. But for moms in the industry, especially as a female-driven, society that we're in right now, it's very powerful to see that you can make both ends work. And I did feel a lot of that shame trying to do both with JC. I would hide the fact that I was a mom on auditions, or I would hide the fact that I was an actor around different worlds that I was in, because you just feel that weight on your shoulders. So that's really what my podcast, Lights, Camera, Rolling Mom, is about, is bringing the world of momming and the world of screenwriting and entertainment together. I say it's from call sheets to cookie sheets. Our stories are all the same.
That's really, really clever. How long have you had the podcast now?
So I've been working the behind the scenes, and for people who know, podcasts are not easy by any means.
We've got our producer over here, Matt Stoker, going,
It is not easy. So I've been working on it for about a year, and we just started releasing episodes 3 weeks ago, but it's been about a year process, getting the thoughts behind it, where our niches, our focus, and the different guests lined up. So it's been about a year in progress, but we just launched it a few weeks ago.
Congratulations. It sounds like a great topic, really. And it sounds like something that a lot of people are going to have a lot of opinions about too. And the truth is, I'll say it if nobody else wants to say it, it is harder for moms still to decide. It is. Do the guys in the room have I don't know.
No, I can see that for sure.
I don't have children, so I feel like I can't weigh in on this properly, probably.
Yeah.
I think it's a society thing because a lot of times
Yeah.
men are like, "Oh, you're supposed to go out and do the work." Women, you're supposed to stay home and take care of the kids. But and then when they want to actually have a career, it just kind of they feel that guilt and society guilt, and
Yeah.
then it's also trying to balance it and the home and everything else and just life in general. I think
I
they get
mean,
hit with a lot of things
yeah.
when it really should just all be kind of equal with it.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that it's changed and there's more men staying home, so I'm not trying to attack the guys or anything, but it does see, went through, I cannot tell you, Jency, like how much it affected my young motherhood. So I'm so glad you're doing this podcast, and it might be interesting to have people on there from, from that are older too, that and how it's even changed, and if it has changed, because and how much it's really changed, because the inner turmoil was the hardest part. The inner turmoil, because and moms do it to each other, like you said, because
Yes, and it's mean and it's awful, and
Yeah.
it has to stop because everybody's on the same team.
Right.
It's just a toxic environment that doesn't need to exist. It's purely created by moms.
Yeah, and it doesn't even need to be dads versus moms. And I didn't
No.
mean to create that environment. It's just if anybody's needing to stay home and you're, somebody, if they would, if they did make the decision that somebody wants to stay home, they should be supported in that. And if they make the decision they both want to work, they should be supported in that. But I remember one mom in particular, won't call her out, but man, she would say, well, that I can't believe that person's trying to get help with her kids, because if that was me, I would go clean toilets before I would ever ask and try to stay home with my kids or something. It was just so mean and just so, I'm thinking, you don't know their situation. You don't know her mental state. You don't know what's going on in their home. You don't know their fundamental beliefs or what they decided when they took a vow to be together, that, one might stay home and one, and I think so much goes into it, and even culture goes into it. The culture of what people bring to a marriage, and especially if you add two different cultures into a marriage, and then they don't even think about what happens when we have kids. So it's a very, very interesting topic. But I do have to ask you. So I want to hear some stories about, but not mine, about the moms who in the business who are Ashley said I had to ask you about some of the moms who are the pushy moms with their kids and things like that. She said you had some stories. Is that what she was talking about? Or was she talking about something else?
I don't know, but I have plenty from just. So I was shooting a show. This one, yes. So we were shooting a show back in Dallas, and they hire kid actors, obviously, to play the kid roles. And they were doing a call for auditions. And there was this young girl, bless her heart. I don't remember her name, but I remember the casting director, which she went in, and it was a very serious scene. So you have to cry, you have to be emotional. And she went in, came back out, and we all kind of looked at her to see, because we thought she did a really good job. And we were kind of looking at her, kind of looking at the mom, kind of looking at the rest of the crew. And the mom just goes, well, that was shit. Let's go home. And you're like, your sweet daughter just nailed the audition. It's lovely, but okay, guess you don't think your daughter did very well. Now, I don't know if she booked it or not, but I'll never forget the mom just being like, well, that was shit. Let's go home. And just degrading the child and just striking all of us like, did that really just happen? That is nuts. And then you have, kind of on the flip side, the other moms who know every single line to their kids' audition. They go into the audition with them. They're the ones like mouthing the lines to the kids, and you're just like, let your kid do his job. If he wants to do it, if she wants to do it, great, they'll nail it. And if not, don't live vicariously through your kid because
Right.
you want to be famous. This is
Right.
nuts. So you've had both ends of the spectrum. Parents who think their kids have done a really crappy job, and other ones who just continue to feed, and you can tell that their kid is just like, Mom, can you please stop? This is
Yeah.
embarrassing.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, it was from really young. Tyler was doing all of that, and eventually got to where I couldn't even. It was so stressful that he his dad would take him to a lot of stuff because I couldn't handle it. Was just so stressful for me. And he called me after, he'll probably call me tonight after this one, but he called me after we had a certain someone on the show. And,
Uh-huh.
and he said, I was pacing the whole time. I've been nervous all day. And in case, so now I know how you felt when I was little because I was afraid you were going to totally mess it up. And I was like, thank you, Tyler. He goes, but you didn't. You did really, really well. But it is so hard. And I remember a story. They also treat moms, and people don't realize that those children are commodities. I mean, they're money to that modeling company, that print ad, that TV show. One time, did he ever tell you this story? So I had forgotten to get their hair has to look exactly, like it looks on their headshot. And he had what back then was like a little surfer's cut. Now you might call it like a bowl cut. I don't know, but it looked like a little surfer's cut, and it was cute. And I went in, and Trevor, his younger brother, had kind of a number 2
Buzz cut.
because he played football. Okay. I think they were in 7th and 5th grade, or maybe 6th and 4th. And so I went into the fast place that had just opened, those sports clips, okay? Which is not where you take your kids when they're in modeling or acting or whatever. And so they had the receipt. They keep it in the computer of what the formula is for each cut. Well, I turned for 1 nanosecond, and I mean, Jency, it was, you guys, it was a nanosecond. I turned, and I turned back, and I went, and I heard, and it was Trevor's. They had Trevor's number 2. And I had to drive Tyler down to the place where he was, I think, modeling, excuse me, for JCPenney's. And I heard him not screaming at him because I would have screamed back. But they were screaming, not at him, but at them. I heard him in the other room screaming, well, what are we supposed to do? We can't use him, and da-da-da-da-da, what? And they're calling the agency, I'm sure. And so they come back out, and they go, y'all can go. And I go, okay. And we left, and poor little Tyler had Trevor's number 2 buzz cut, and we lost. And I mean, literally, you've heard that, right? And I turned, literally, I don't know why I didn't get a clue when they had the little, because I think they did shave like maybe the very back of his head. But when they had that thing, and I turned, and they started right here. But his hair. And that was it. I mean, it was, and that they do. They treat you like, they don't care. They don't care that that's going to hurt the kids' feelings. They could care less. It's like money lost, time lost. What's wrong with you, lady? Get him out of here. And I was like, oh, okay. So I did, because it was all my fault. It was horrible. It was, and it's from then on, I was like, I can't do this. I don't have the. And then another time, some moms, Tyler had some commercial, ravioli commercial with the new jingle, and these moms got together and got him booted out of the show and got another kid in it. And now that kid got on, he did get, I won't say the name, got on a big show. And I just didn't have I don't know.
It's a lot of game playing.
Ooh, I had no idea. I thought, so anyway, it's tough. It's a tough business, right? So Tyler, when he was teaching yoga, back to the yoga, I think that's when he found the most of his serenity was through his yoga. He started, and then he took classes, and then he started teaching when he was in LA. And he did have to tell me to stop fangirling, because he did have some people come to his class that I was like, oh, or they'd come when he was a barista on what's the name of the place on Melrose or something. And I was like, ooh. And he's like, Mom, I just write their name on the cup. They don't know who I am. They don't care who I am. I'm just writing their name on the cup and hoping I spell it right and calling out their name, And they may say hi, or whatever. But the at the yoga place, he did have some regulars come who it was kind of sad because some of them really didn't seem like they had, he would tell stories of a couple of them who didn't seem like they necessarily really had friends, like people that they really could trust as friends. And they would just hang out. Like after yoga, he'd say they just hang out there and just talk. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they seemed to find serenity at yoga too.
Yeah.
Didn't you think?
I think so, yeah. It's I think a lot of people, that's what they look for, is just kind of that peaceful feel after. Also is, kind of more of a spiritual connection. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. Do you find the same thing at your studio?
Yeah, yeah, and that's so funny because I know where Tyler did his yoga teacher training and where he taught or teaches, and he opened up another branch. That's the same company I got mine and taught at for a while back in Dallas. And it's a weird feeling once you've worked really, really hard, once you've pushed your body to a limit, whether it's mentally or physically. After you're done, you just have a different connection with people in class because y'all all kind of went through that together.
Mm-hmm.
So I do see the hanging out aspect. Just it's a different, it's a serenity that you get after you go through it. That's pretty magical.
After Tyler's class, I had a passing out aspect. I'm not going to lie. I went back to my hotel. He came here and did a class one time, and it was a big enough, crowded enough class that I could sort of modify my movements to like kind of hide. But the one that when we were in LA, was it in LA?
Yeah. LA.
And then I went back to my hotel, and I had a migraine. I had no serenity. I had like, I'm gonna die.
We didn't see her the rest of the day.
Yeah, they didn't see me for a day. I was like, I'm in bed. It was a hard class. I was like, Tyler, and he goes, well, you said you've been going to yoga for like 3 years, Mom. And I'm like, not that kind of yoga. I go to the restorative old lady yoga, not to that kind of yoga.
I go to the sleep yoga where you sit in one pose for 7 minutes and then you just barely switch and go for another 7 minutes. Yeah.
I need that one. Yeah. So I said we'd circle back around to the mental health impact and the aspect of that. And how did that, you brought it up with the depression and the postpartum depression. How does that affect your day now? Or do you mind me asking, does that still affect you now that your daughter's older, or?
Yeah, so again, I was depressed during my pregnancy. I didn't want to admit it. I thought I was just very angry at myself for getting pregnant. I was just trying to blame it on myself. When looking back, it was a legit depression. And then especially during postpartum depression back then, and probably still a little bit now, all you hear about is if they have postpartum depression, they're going to hurt their baby or they're going to hurt yourself, which was never the case. I would have never hurt my daughter. I would have never hurt myself. But there was just a chemical imbalance that I knew wasn't right. And that was affecting my day to day because I was tired, or I just would prop up a bottle and let JC give herself her own bottle. I didn't want to have that mother-daughter connection for the first couple of months, which I knew wasn't right. I just didn't know why. And I don't want to say it wasn't right. I knew that something was off. And so that's where, again, the yoga came into play, the improv came into play, was to actually realize that something was not chemically right in my body. And it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my daughter's fault. It wasn't anybody else's fault. It was just something that my body has. I didn't really have a problem with it until kind of the pandemic started happening. And I think a lot of people have realized just a lot about themselves in the last
Right.
year or two. But I've noticed those moments creeping back in where the only way I can feel it is high self doubt, to where I'll almost make myself break down and cry, and just it's a bad moment. But in those moments, I definitely listen to my breath. I pull from those different practices, but I also allow myself a moment to feel what's going on. I've learned through the last couple of years that if you suppress your feelings, they're eventually going to explode. So you have to acknowledge what's going on to be able to push back through it. So I have episodes every once in a while, but really the practice of breathing, learning to accept my emotions, and knowing that I am not abnormal has been the biggest, blessing, learning about mental health, and that it's become more aware in our society. I think that is a huge difference.
Right. And I'm happy that you said the same thing as me about the automatic assumption that people make. They go all the way to the extreme case of you're going to hurt your child or you're going to hurt yourself. Although that might be the extreme case, that's not the norm. The norm is there's a lot of cases where there's just an imbalance or something off. I mean, your body's gone through a lot of hormonal changes, and the chemicals have changed in your body. So, and I think bringing awareness to that for moms is very important on the podcast and everywhere else. And I am glad that I will just say there was not a lot of resources back when I had, especially the boys, because my story about when we went to, what were they called? Lamaze classes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God. Okay, so mine was, do I have to go, first of all? And then there were 3 questions they asked you. They asked you, and this is the TMI, I'm sure, for some people. Here they go. Are you going to find out the sex? Okay, and even that people judged. They judged that back then. And then are you going to breastfeed? And then number 3, are you, and I was young too, I was 24, same age, and lawyer, I'm like, I'm just graduated from law school, okay? And so like I always see people doing the math, and I'm like, okay, it's legit, but we got married and had, like 9 months later, here comes Tyler. And so and it was that the breastfeeding, and then it was, are you going to have an epidural or anything? You're going to do it. Those are the big 3 questions you get. They go around the room. And so they're like, oh, no, I'm definitely not going to find out the sex of the child. I'm definitely going to breastfeed for sure. They need those antibodies. I have to do that. And no, I'm not making the fun of the ones who are going to do. I'm not making fun of either way. It's just that you should be able to do what you want to do. And then the next one was an absolutely going all natural, And so they came around to me, and I was like, his name is Tyler. I was like, his name is Tyler, and no, I will be going back to the DA's office, so we'll not be able to be breastfeeding. They're like, well, you can pump. I was like, that's a no. And then I said, and yeah, I bring on all that epidural, all that stuff that you got. Bring it on. And every lady in there, I think, looked at me, and guy, whoever was in there, including the teacher, like I was, I mean, it was so bad because I was like the last one, and I was like, okay, here it comes. It was like, because back then, and it wasn't like it was hippie days, but there was, all of them were just very emphatic, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it was very judgmental. People get very, very judgmental about how people do things, and I don't know why they have time for all that. It's like, do what you want to do. I don't care. And then on my other children, I changed some of that. I mixed it up, But with Tyler, it was like, no, this is how it's going to be. And he loved to stay
There's a great Golden Girls quote by Blanche. She goes, "No, I think you should have a baby the natural way, just like God gave him, numb from the waist down." And
I
I'm
like that one. I just wish we had pulled up Golden Girl quiz because I would lose. Would you win?
No. I told you the only one. I used to watch it some, but the handyman on the Golden Girls actually worked for me in Nashville.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, he was a contractor of mine, kitchen remodeler in Nashville. I think his name was Blake. I think his name was Blake. The same thing. Whatever his name was on the show, that was his real name too.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
How funny.
I watched it all the time, but I haven't broken it. I haven't started watching it again. But I watched it growing up all the time. And Tyler's like, I can't believe you haven't started watching it again, Mom.
We're going to go home and watch it now, I bet.
I watched a lot of that stuff. But I was going
I'll
to
tell you what not to watch, which, by the way, Matt, don't ever watch the epidural part of it.
I don't plan on that.
No,
on that
epidural.
show?
No. When you,
Yeah, the Golden Girl.
Yeah,
Oh, the Golden Girls? Wait,
on
are
the
you tying
epidural,
that together?
the epidural part,
Oh.
yeah. When you see the needle, it's about this big.
Oh my
and it goes,
gosh.
yeah.
I had a problem
That was
with
probably the worst
yeah.
part of the whole thing.
Yeah, I had a problem with like the vaccine needles and like I mean, I know in my head you barely even feel it, but I couldn't deal with that. Like, no, there's no way I'd pass out.
Yeah.
I was just don't look at the needles.
I was watching.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe shouldn't have watched that one.
What has to get into your...
It was like this.
It worked. I don't know. It
It's
worked.
great. I highly recommend it.
It worked. So I will be, and Tyler will be an uncle. I'll be a grandmother next week.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
so Trevor,
exciting.
Trevor's having, I think they're inducing on Wednesday or Thursday, and Trevor's having a little boy. It's named Walker. They know it's a boy named Walker. Yeah, so he's going to be a cutie. And I have no grandmother name. So anybody, people been sending me names. And I'm like, nope. None of them fit. So, but he doesn't even know what he's going to be called yet. So I guess we'll just have it,
Whatever pops out.
That didn't sound good.
He'll come up. I'm telling you, he'll come up with his own names.
That's true. Well, do we want to pull? I know that Jency doesn't do readings, but we want to pull cards for the week and then wrap it up.
Yeah, for the week because
do you
my
want to
iPad
hang
died.
with us for just a
I'd
second?
love to.
Okay.
Yes, I'd love to experience this.
All right. So we'll do two, like 1 and 2.
Yes.
So, Jency, why don't you tell us who's going to read first and who's going to read second? Should Roger read first or should I read first?
Let's have Roger read first.
Okay, perfect.
Number 1.
You're number 1.
I'm number 1 for everyone.
All right. What deck are you reading with?
I'm reading with the Bianco Nero. My hand's twisted, Matt. That one. Obviously, you can see we use this deck quite a bit.
It's a good deck.
It's a very good deck. Okay, so I got the 3 of Cups.
So everybody get in your head whether you're number 1 or number 2 for the week.
And so I got the 3 of Cups here. And you can see they're actually kind of celebrating. And that's the thing. This week, take and look for those places and those points that you can celebrate. You know, you may not have like the huge blowout celebration that you can go to and hang out with all your friends, but there are small little things happening all the time, and take those celebrations where you can and make things great. Feel good about it and really accept those points.
Find the moments.
Yes.
Okay.
What is it? Cinco? No, that's something else.
I don't know.
Carpe diem.
Oh, yeah. Seize the day.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm number 2, and it's interesting you chose that because I always choose 2. All right. So for you two number 2s out there, I'm reading from the Radiant Rider-Waite deck. And I'm not going to read it reverse. I'm just going to read it regular. For the 2s this week, I want you, and it's me too, because I'm reading for myself, to watch those of you who might be allowing people to kind of, we can't, it's like I said earlier, we can't let somebody shame us. It's, it's on us a little bit, but I'm talking about joy, moments of joy. Roger said, find those little moments of joy. My card is more about those of us who allow others to plant things in our mind, like little jabs that we take, and we blow them up into too much. We blow them up into something that it's more than it is, and then it robs us of our joy. And so we tend to be called empaths, and we tend to be called too sensitive sometimes. We tend to get called paranoid, but and maybe something really did happen to us, but we need to be careful to not let that get in our head to where it robs us of the joy. So if we think somebody else is getting, we'll use acting, a part, they got a call back and we didn't get a call back, and then that robs us of our joy on everything else we're doing for the rest of the week, and we may miss another opportunity. That's what I'm getting for the twos this week. And that's apropos for me because it's been going on a lot in my life. I let a lot of people do that. I talk about it in my book, Segue into the Magic of Connection, about those of us who are empaths and do that a lot. We take things, and even though we're highly intuitive, we tend to make things about us that maybe aren't about us. I call it reverse narcissism. We think that people are upset with us, they're mad at us. They didn't come to the party because they're upset, when really they're maybe not at the party because that you invited them to, or the dinner that you invited them to because maybe they don't feel well, and it's about them. Maybe it's not because something we did. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, and I talk about that in my book. So that's the number 2 this week, to really practice knowing that it's not all about us, and we're not trying to be snotty when we do that. It's really sometimes we're being too hard on ourselves. So that's for the number 2, for the sensitives in the world, right?
Yep.
Okay. Jency, I really enjoyed having you on the show and getting to see you again. My savior, honestly, for a whole year was my dear son, Tyler, and he was always so safe and so sweet, and you were so sweet and he was always so sweet when he'd come in talking about you. And I really appreciate everything you did, and I'm so happy that you're doing so well. And I wanted to mention your podcast, and I'm assuming they can look for it just on all the podcast platforms, is the way we say it. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're on all the platforms.
Okay. So it's Lights, Camera, Rolling, Mom. I love that. It's a show for moms, by a mom, about moms in the entertainment industry. And I look forward to watching that. And also, we can find Jency on at Jency Allison Weeks. And now, if would you want your this is your website. It's www.jencyallisonweeks.com to get more information on Jency. So I look forward. Do you teach? By the way, I didn't ask you that. Do you teach yoga?
I haven't in the last 2 years, but now that everything's starting to open up, I'll probably start teaching again. Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
I hope
you'll come back again.
I appreciate it.
We really appreciate it. And we want to thank everybody for watching. We do want to tell you that our store's opening, our grand opening is when?
This Friday, 6 to 9. We are kind of open up there now. So if you want to just come by, we don't have all the inventory in Frisco, but we are letting people come in and shop around, look around.
So this is our third store in Jency. It's right there where we used to live. It's right at the corner of Lebanon and the toll road, right there where Tyler was raised, right on that street, on that intersection. And so, so it's sort of softly opened if y'all want to come in. Otherwise, the grand opening is this Friday from 6 to 9. Everybody's invited. There'll be like sparkling water and maybe a little bit of champagne, just very easy, light opening this Friday night, right?
Yep.
Other than that, we really appreciate everybody for listening to us talk about things that matter to our soul, and you can discern and decide what topics matter to yours. Thanks for joining us.
Good night, guys.